Okay, here's the video. It's about the rest of the ocean. You know, near the shore, sunlight reaches all the way from the top of the ocean to the ocean floor. And as a result, many kind of things live there. Lots of plants, lots of animals. The temperature is pretty similar at the top of the ocean as it is at the ocean floor as long as the sunlight can reach it. The salinity is pretty close to the same from top to bottom. And there are a couple of different sections of that area, the near the shore area we want to talk about. One is coral reefs, and you can see some coral reefs right here. This is what the coral reefs would look like as they are coming to the top. You can see some of them reach up to the top and some of them are just kind of close to the top here. The coral reefs look like this. Now what you have, this is not, this is dead corals. There is a little bitty animal called a coral. It's about the size of an ant, and they tend to clump together in the sea. So whenever they die clumped together. Now their bodies, their exoskeletons are basically limestone. So if you were to technically wonder what these coral reefs are made of, it's limestone, even though it's the dead bodies of corals. And what it does, it provides incredibly good shelter. You can see all the fish that happen to be near this coral reef here. Fish can dive in and out of these little jagged areas and be protected from larger fish. There's algae that grows on corals, and that's something the little fish and the little animals can kind of feed off of, and big fish kind of hover around hoping little fish will come out so they can have a meal. It just seems like there's so many species around coral reefs, and you can see up here you have a Nemo type fish inside the coral reef. The world's largest coral reef is the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, and this is a picture of it, but it's even bigger than this. The Great Barrier Reef in Australia is 1,250 miles long. It's incredibly long. That's like driving from here to the other side of Texas. Coral reefs provide protection for many different species. A large number of fish and other sea animals, small fish, big fish, and from what the book says, 25% of all ocean life lives in or around coral reefs. And they also protect the shoreline from big waves. If you have a big wave coming and it hits an area like this will kind of diminish that wave a lot. And it also kind of helps a little with storm damage, especially the waves part, the water damage that could come from there. Now you only find coral reefs in tropical climates like Florida and farther south. And it only happens in water where sunlight can reach the bottom. Now there's another area called kelp forest, and you can see kelp forest down here to the bottom right. The kelp forest serve the same function as coral reefs. You can see you have lots of fish around it. This is kind of a simulated kelp forest here because you can see like a window back there. This is probably inside some aquarium, but it's the same principle. You have these huge stretched up bits of seaweed. This is seaweed's what this is. That's what kelp is. It's seaweed that stretches up toward the top, grows on the bottom, stretches up toward the top, and they provide what looks like an underwater forest. And fish can hide in and amongst it just like they could the coral reef. Bigger fish will come out around. It will support bacteria where the little bitty fish can kind of feed off of it. And it just really kind of serves the same function as a coral reef, except these are found more northern, or I guess in less tropical climates, northern in the northern hemisphere. Large communities of seaweed stretch up from the ocean bottom. And of course you have to be in water where sunlight can reach the bottom, or plants would not grow if sunlight doesn't reach the bottom. Now you have the areas of the ocean that are farther out than coral reefs and kelp forests. In fact, on the map you can see most of the ocean would be this. It would be the deep ocean. Now the deep ocean is a little bit different than areas that is close to land. There are no rocks, no reefs, no big plants, and very little shelter. There's not much life way out in the deep ocean. And you can imagine, if you're a fish, would you want to be around areas where you can be protected like a coral reef or a kelp forest? You would, because if you're just out in the open, any old predator can come get you without much trouble. Now, one thing that is in the deep ocean near the top is called phytoplankton. Areas where the sunlight can reach is where you find this phytoplankton, and it's a microscopic floating organism. This is kind of pictures of things that are officially called phytoplankton. This is like under a microscope what phytoplankton would look like. And they live at or near the surface. Now, this is a plant. This is a plant, and there's a lot of it. So much of this plant near the ocean surface, I should say, so much of this plant near the ocean surface that it's actually a large source of the world's oxygen. You may remember that plants take in carbon dioxide and give off oxygen. So this is kind of like a rainforest on top of the ocean. And it's not completely matted up on top of the ocean, but there's a lot that happens to be near the top, and it puts out a lot of oxygen. And you know, the world would have a lot less oxygen if it were not for phytoplankton at the top of the deep ocean. The farther down you go in the deep ocean, the colder it gets, and that's especially true when you get past where the sunlight touches. No plants are going to be able to survive there. You do have a few fish, and the fish usually have no choice but to eat each other. They have to, they don't have any bacteria down there for the most part to feed on. They don't have any plants or big schools of fish to feed on, so they have to kind of have, their bodies are kind of been made that way. Most of them have small eyes. You can see here's an angelfish, have small eyes. They have huge mouths. And look at this eel here, has a huge mouth, also has small eyes. The teeth are very, very large. Some glow in the dark. And some have extensions that glow in the dark. For example, this anglerfish here, it's anglerfish, not an angelfish. Anglerfish here has a little something that sticks out the top, which glows in the dark. And what it's meant to do is to attract other fish around it where he can just come eat it up. I think you may have even seen a little bit of that in a movie or two. There is something at the bottom of the ocean floor sometimes called a hydrothermal vent, and you can see an example of one right here. A hydrothermal vent is kind of like a geyser that is on the sea floor. There are magma packets under land, and there are magma packets under the water, pockets under the water, and what they do, they heat up water and they shoot it up into the sea. Now, the sea all around it is incredibly cold because it's at the bottom of the ocean, but all this steam is warm, and all the coldness around it quickly makes it cold. But as a result, there actually are some fish and crabs and mussels that live near these. In fact, you can see some pictures taken on the bottom of the ocean floor. This is not in shallow water here. This is in deep water on the rocks near hydrothermal vents. And they stay their entire lives right there in darkness, getting the heat from the hydrothermal vent. The deep ocean is mostly unexplored. It's so cold, it's so deep, the pressure is so hard that very little of the deep ocean is even explored. There is a concern about fishing, back to more fishable areas, and that concern is overfishing, the catching of fish faster than they can reproduce. Species like yellowfin tuna have been a victim of overfishing, and you can see this fish right here is not the yellowfin tuna, it's the Atlantic cod. But look at the stats of how many Atlantic cod were recorded off the coast of Newfoundland. In the 1960s and 1970s, there were lots of them. But what happened as fishermen really started targeting them, they've gone down to almost nothing in 1992 farther. And what's happening is fishermen, we're not talking about fishermen with your cane pole and your bobber. We're talking about fishermen who have nets like this. Look at the size of this net. Some nets are like the sizes of football fields. And you can see how many fish were scooped up in here. Literally, you can scoop up fish faster than fish can reproduce. And that's exactly what happened to this fish down here. It came to almost the verge of extinction. Yellowfin tuna is kind of the same way. Now, what's going to happen whenever that's the case is in these big nets, there are going to be fish that you're not targeting by accident. What if a turtle just happens to be swimming by? The turtle's going to be picked up. Look at this thing down here. I imagine most of the red things here are shrimp that these nets are looking for. But you got a shark that just happened to get caught up in there. You've got all kinds of seaweed that happens to be caught up in there. There's no telling what other kind of animals there are in there. This is called the bycatch. The bycatch is what fishermen catch on accident. They didn't mean to. It's estimated that fishermen have to throw away up to 30% of what they catch. Up to 30% of what they catch is a bycatch whenever they use these huge nets like this. Now you can find other things down at the bottom of the ocean. Minerals and oils are found under the sea floor. Salt is often gotten from the sea by using evaporation. Sewage and pollution, of course, is a concern, and there actually are some places in the ocean that are called dead zones, where no plants live and where no animals lived because of pollution. Well, I hope you've learned a little bit about the deep and the shallow ocean.